Once upon a time, in the bustling village of Bethsaida, by the Sea of Galilee, there lived a man named Simon. He was a fisherman by trade, working long hours on the waters, casting nets and hauling in his catch, living a simple and hard life. Simon was an ordinary man, nothing special, but that was about to change in a way he could never have imagined. One ordinary day, as Simon and his brother Andrew were preparing their boats after a long night of fishing, a figure appeared along the shore. This man was no ordinary traveler. There was something compelling about him. His name was Jesus. Jesus approached Simon and Andrew with a quiet but powerful invitation. "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." Without a second thought, Simon dropped everything, the nets, the boat, the life he knew, and followed Jesus. And so the journey of transformation began. In the early days of following Jesus, Simon became known by a new name, Peter, which means the rock. It was a name that Jesus gave him, though Peter himself didn't feel like much of a rock. He was impetuous, eager, and often spoke before thinking. He was a man of boldness, sometimes too much so. But there was something in his heart that was deeply committed to following Jesus, even if he didn't always understand the path. One day, as Jesus and his disciples were out on a boat, a great storm suddenly hit. The disciples were terrified, battling the waves, when they saw a figure walking on the water toward them. It was Jesus. The disciples thought they were seeing a ghost, but Jesus called out, reassuring them not to be afraid. And in a moment of daring faith, Peter called out to Jesus, saying, "If it's really you, tell me to come to you on the water." And Jesus said simply, "Come." So Peter stepped out of the boat, and to his amazement he began to walk on the water toward Jesus. But as the wind howled and the waves crashed around him, Peter took his eyes off Jesus. Fear crept in, and he started to sink. "Lord, save me," Peter cried out, and immediately Jesus reached out his hand, pulling him up. "Why did you doubt, Peter?" Jesus asked, not in anger, but with a gentle invitation to have faith. As Jesus and his disciples traveled, there came a pivotal moment. Jesus turned to them and asked, "Who do people say I am?" The disciples answered with a variety of answers. Some said he was a prophet, others a great teacher. But then Jesus made it personal. "But what about you? Who do you say I am?" Peter, without hesitation, declared, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." Jesus looked at Peter, smiled, and said, "You are blessed, Peter, for this revelation has come not from your own understanding, but from God. You are the rock, and on this rock I will build my church." In that moment, Peter understood that he had just spoken the truth that would become the foundation of the Christian faith. Jesus was the Savior, the Messiah sent to redeem the world. But Peter's journey wasn't without its struggles. As Jesus' life drew closer to its end, Peter's faith would be tested in ways he never expected. On the night before Jesus was arrested, he told his disciples that they would all fall away. But Peter, ever bold and confident, declared, "Even if everyone else falls away, I will never leave you." Jesus looked at him, sorrow in his eyes, and said, "Before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times." Peter was in disbelief. How could he, the one who had walked on water, who had boldly declared Jesus as the Messiah, deny him? But that very night, as Jesus was arrested, Peter's courage faltered. He followed from a distance, keeping to the shadows. And as the night wore on, people began to recognize him as one of Jesus' followers. "Aren't you one of his disciples?" they asked. And 3 times in his fear and panic, Peter denied it. "I don't know him," he said. As the rooster crowed, Peter realized what he had done. The weight of his failure hit him like a ton of bricks. He had denied the very one he had vowed to protect. Overcome with grief, he wept bitterly, full of regret. But Peter's story wasn't over. After Jesus rose from the dead, he appeared to his disciples on the shore of the Sea of Galilee. Peter, still carrying the weight of his failure, was the first to jump out of the boat and swim to Jesus when he saw him. And when they sat down for breakfast, Jesus asked Peter 3 times, "Do you love me?" Each time Peter answered, "Yes, Lord, you know I love you." And with each answer, Jesus responded, "Feed my sheep." It was as though Jesus was offering Peter a fresh start, erasing his past denials and giving him a new purpose. Peter, who had failed Jesus 3 times, was now commissioned 3 times to lead and care for God's people. Jesus' words weren't just words of forgiveness. They were a calling to Peter to become the leader of the early church, the rock he had always known Peter could be. Peter's life from that point forward was marked by a new boldness. He preached the message of Jesus, even in the face of fierce opposition. His words and actions helped lay the foundation for the early church, and thousands of people came to faith through his ministry. Peter became a man of great courage, standing firm in his faith even when faced with imprisonment and persecution. He was no longer the impulsive fisherman he once was, but a man who knew the depths of God's grace and had a heart that burned for the truth. In the end, Peter was martyred for his faith, crucified in Rome, but he went to his death with the confidence of knowing he had fulfilled the purpose God had for him. Just like Peter, we all have moments when our faith is tested. Sometimes we act boldly and sometimes we fail. But no matter where you are on your journey, know this: God is calling you just as he called Peter. He sees you not for your failures, but for the potential within you. Will you step out in faith? Will you trust in his grace even when you feel unworthy? Just as Jesus restored Peter, he offers restoration and a fresh start to all who call on his name. Take a moment today to reflect on Peter's story and ask yourself, what is God calling me to do? How can I boldly follow him even in the midst of challenges? No matter your past or present, you too are invited to follow Jesus, to grow in your faith and to become the person he has called you to be. You are not too far gone. God has a purpose for you, and it's time to step into it.